Today we are going to talk about the tools of NVR, about how to set limits. But before considering the special tools that we have developed, the special measures that we have developed, I'd like to talk about 2 points of principle. The first one is the question of punishment. Okay, as you will see, the tools of NVR, the main tools that we utilize are not typical punishments. Actually, they are not punishments in a traditional sense at all. But it is not that in practicing any NVR, we say that punishments are out. Okay, punishments are a bad thing to do. Punishments have no place in education. No, that's not true. There has been absolutely no society in world history that has succeeded to function without punishments, also in education. So we are not simply going to invent the wheel and invent an education that is completely free of punishment. NVR, okay, as a particular method, does not rest on punishment. Punishment is none of its foundations, but it doesn't abolish punishment. On the contrary, it sometimes utilizes existing punishments, changing it, adapting those punishments in ways that they become more significant, that they have more educational content, that they transmit the values of NVR. We'll see a couple of examples. One of them is suspensions in schools. We work with schools. We never say to the teachers or to the school director, you don't use suspensions. We don't do that. If we were to do that, we will simply be already relinquishing the great majority of schools. They'll say, oh, come on. Okay? But we have a procedure which has been described in both in the New Authority and in a book for teachers. In English, it is to be published. It will be called Courageous Teachers, a companion volume to Courageous Parents. So in that book, we talk about present suspension, a kind of suspension that is modified, okay, to manifest the elements of presence, okay, which change it completely. Instead of being a disconnected suspension, this is a suspension in which the teachers, the school remain present in the life of the child. Okay, the child receives messages from the school. Somebody comes to bring him homework at home. Okay, his homeroom teacher is in contact with him every day and in contact with his parents, and somebody is there back at the school to receive him back when he comes back from the punishment, from the suspension. So we utilize the let's say traditional suspension, we modify it in ways. Then, okay, teachers say, but then you're investing too much time. Suspension should be something absolutely simple. Okay, you invest time, but then you also use it more selectively. Okay, since you have the other tools of NVR, okay, you are going to use suspension less frequently, sometimes considerably less frequently. So invest time in the fewer number of suspensions that you do, and you make it much more constructive, especially you don't pay the terrible price of disconnection. There's another element, for instance, in vigilant care, we saw that if a child, a teen, refuses to answer the 4 simple questions in the passage to focus attention, the parents withhold pocket money. Withholding pocket money is very, very near. It's actually a punishment, isn't it? You withhold, but it is a special kind of punishment. Why? Because the parents say to the child, no, I cannot give you money if I'm absolutely sure that you're using the money for pernicious purposes. I cannot give you something that damages you. Okay, so the moment, okay, we have an understanding about those very simple principles, where are you going, with whom, what is the program, and the time, then there's no problem. Then I have a good reason to trust that you're utilizing money, the money that I give you, the pocket money that I give you, not in pernicious way. Okay, so it is still something very close to traditional punishment with a special element. What is really bad is what I call absolutely arbitrary punishments, like for instance, a child is very offends his mother, and you stop. You take him the cell phone. That's not a good thing. You take the cell phone sometimes when the child is using the cell phone in pernicious ways. So punishment is not out. It would make us completely irrelevant. It would make us such ideologues. We cannot do that. It's impossible. We have to use what people do and improve upon it. This is one thing. The second thing of importance is the issue of the expression setting limits. What we're going to talk is about how to set limits in a positive, constructive way. But when we think about setting limits, we often think, I set the limits there by the child. No, that's not true. We set limits here. It is our limits. Parents actually set limits on themselves. They say, these are my limits. These are the things that I won't accept. These are your limits. These are the things. It's very different. It's very difficult because these are your limits is a message of control. These are my limits is a message of responsibility. It's completely different. And the limit is a very special kind of limit. It's not only not that over there, it is over here, but it's not only that the parent sets the limits. As we shall see, the parents are the limits. So that those limits have a very special character. They're loving limits, they're warm limits. They're actually limits of flesh and blood, of commitment. So they feel different. That's what we'll be talking about, how to set warm and loving limits. Okay, this in way of introduction. Now we can go over and we'll have two talks about some of the special tools that we developed in NVR. This one and then the next one again. Okay, we'll begin with the NVR tool that is probably the most used tool of NVR. Almost everybody uses. As we'll see, the sit-in, there are places in which they use it less for interesting and important reasons. We'll be talking about it. But the announcement is something that almost everybody likes. But it is a good thing to understand what it is, what are its goals, how you do it exactly, what you try to achieve, and what it is not is also very important. So first of all, first thing to understand about the announcement, what is the announcement? The parents actually say to the child in a very special way, we are not going to accept this behavior anymore. We'll resist it and we'll not keep it secret anymore. We'll get help from anybody who is able to help us. And we are doing this because this is our utmost duty. Those are, let's say, the chief elements, the main elements, the constitutive elements of the announcement. We'll see some examples afterwards, how they are. But the first thing to understand is that the announcement is not something that the parents make with the expectation that the child will stop the problematic behavior. That means the target of the announcement are first and foremost the parents. The parents do the announcement as a way of changing themselves. The parents do the announcement as a way of starting a program, of starting a change, of creating a caesura in time, a stop in time. There were those things that happened until now, and what is going to take place from now on will be different. We will act differently. So the goal of the announcement, the first goal, let's say, the target of the announcement is the parents. And this is very important to understand, because when you understand that, the parents at first tend to think, well, the announcement didn't work. Why he didn't change his behavior? That's the same thing that they say about the sit-in, didn't work. Things continued as they were. But the question is whether the announcement changed something in the parents' behavior. If the parents made the announcement and then the announcement is in their mind, and they start changing their attitudes, their responses, what they do, then, okay, the announcement has achieved its most important goal. The other elements of the announcement, one of the important elements of the announcement is to serve as a kind of a rite of passage, a rite of transition between what went before and what comes after it. Okay, that's why it is a break in the flow of time. It starts something new. That's an important goal. And it has to be in the mind of the parents. The child many times will think more of the same. It's up to the parents then to stick to their announcement and then to show that from their side it is not more of the same, that it is something different. Another important goal is to bring the parents together behind one joint message. Okay? As we said already, we don't succeed to get perfect agreement, perfect harmony between the parents. We don't succeed, and we also don't think it is necessary. Children need different voices. They need stereophonic parenting, so to speak. Okay? If they needed the same voice, then you should clone a parent and have it the same again. That's not true. Okay? Children need this variety. Okay? So that it is not. But we need to have some common denominator. And the announcement is a great help in getting a common denominator. Another important goal of the announcement is to prioritize, to help the parents understand that they cannot achieve or fight for all their objectives at once. If they do that, okay, they will simply fritter away their efforts. Okay, there will be fragmentation. So another important goal of the announcement is to select and prioritize. Therefore, in the announcement, usually there are only two at most. Okay, two goals, two things that the parents are going to focus upon. And parents say, what about the other things? There's a whole list. And one of the tendencies of parents very often is to bring a whole list of things that they want to put into the announcement. Okay, so we tell them, look, it is not that you stop doing your other things as a parent, but those two things are the ones on which you are going to really put up all of your effort, all of your resistance. That the two most important goals, most important thing. One thing that I say must always have precedence is violent and dangerous behaviors. Okay, if there is violence against the parents or against siblings, violence must be in the announcement. You cannot say, no, if he is a good student, I am willing to put up with a certain degree of violence. Because if you're going to put up with the violence, you're going to do a lot of damage. So violence has always to be, if there is violence, okay, violence will always be in the announcement, and clearly self-endangering activities will be in the announcement. It's very interesting. Parents sometimes have quite a lot of difficulty giving up all kinds of small goals, okay? I have parents say, what? We should allow her to go to bed without brushing her teeth? And he says, look, you can try to get her to brush her teeth, but this won't be one of the things in your program of nonviolent resistance. Okay, you can try to persuade her. You can give her even reinforcement if you want. You can explain, okay? But fight, I mean, constructive fighting, struggle, it will be, first of all, the goals of the announcement. And it's very important then to tell the parents when you do the announcement and you start really fighting constructively for those two goals on those two subjects of the announcement, you'll be changing the whole landscape because you'll be changing yourselves. The announcement changes you, okay? And then the child sees that you are able to keep your word, that you're able to stick to it. So it changes the whole interaction. It creates a change in the interaction with the child, in the way the child perceives you and the way that you perceive yourself, that carry over beyond the specific context of the announcement. So this is about the goals of the announcement. Then in the announcement, it is very important to do careful preparation. You don't simply define the announcement and you say you prepare it and you give it. No, you sit with the parents and prepare it. Usually, okay, we spend the whole session, okay, preparing for the announcement. Sometimes even two, okay, depends on the style of the therapy. There are therapies that go more into a high level of detail, consider, okay, and others that can be quicker, okay. But okay, one session is a good idea. What does it mean, preparation? First of all, what should be in the announcement? And here, if there are two parents, there can be a discussion. Okay, they can decide. There is a procedure that has been described. I won't describe it here in the course of the 3 baskets exercise. The 3 baskets exercise is, okay, there's a red basket, a yellow basket, a green basket. Red basket, there you put the behaviors that you resist really with all your strength, with all your might, except for using violence, that you won't do. In the yellow basket, there are the behaviors that you try to change as best as you can, but still you'll be using persuasion. You may give in some reinforcement, you can give praise, okay, you can explain. So that's the yellow basket. And then there's the green basket. The green basket are those behaviors is also very important that at least at the start of the project, okay, it is best to ignore. Okay, to better be able to pay attention to those, okay, 2 things that you are going to focus upon seriously. Okay, so it's a good idea to begin and deciding, okay, this to begin with, we will ignore. Okay, we'll be neutral to that. We will possibly show that we don't like it, maybe that, but we won't talk much about it. We'll be talking more about those in the yellow basket. So this is the 3 baskets exercise. Okay, we have a colleague, Peggy Gittlerstein, who was just presented in the 6th International Conference of NVR, a keynote about 3 baskets in Beijing. It turns out that those 3 baskets were among the most loved exercises for the Chinese professional colleagues in Beijing. Okay, so it's they didn't like the sit-in at all. Okay. They're right, they didn't like this. So preparation includes, okay, creating the list. Preparation includes talking about the parent's behavior, describing and role-playing. It helps very much. Okay, therapists that feel comfortable with role-playing. Okay, therapists who don't feel comfortable with role-playing, that only create a joint description, a joint scenario of how it is going to take place. Okay, that's how it takes place. Okay, this is very important, how it does. What do you do? What do you do if the child reacts like this? What do you do when the child ignores you? What do you do when the child starts screaming? What do you do if the child tears the announcement? Okay, those are common reactions. Okay, in our manual that appears in the book Nonviolent Resistance, okay, in our manual, then we have a description of everything you can do. Like, for instance, the child ignores the announcement completely. Or the child says, I don't care. You don't expect the child to agree to the announcement. Never, never. Okay? He may pay attention. He may even say, okay, but the majority don't. And even if the child pays attention, it doesn't mean that the child is going to change his or her behavior. Not always. Sometimes for a time, okay, for a while, and then test you. Okay, so the announcement is not a cut in the behavior of the child, but it's intended as a cut in the behavior of the parents. Okay, so this is very, so the child ignores or tears the announcement. Okay, you know that principle, you can control the child, you can only control yourself. Then you tell the child, we didn't expect you to agree. This is our announcement. We're only telling you what we are going to do. And we're doing this in order to be fair with you, not to do things behind your back. If you're interested, there'll be a copy, okay, posted on the fridge. If you don't, we're going to do it anyhow. And you leave the room. Okay, this is very important, understanding that the announcement is a one-sided message. It's not a dialogue. Of course, the child is not expected to agree to it or to sign it. Never, never. One good way of augmenting the power of the announcement is to have some of the supporters sign it as witnesses. Okay, grandpa, grandma, uncle. This is a very good way of doing. Then you are increasing, the creating, broad shoulders behind the announcement. You say, the grandma and grandpa know about it, so they signed, the written form of the announcement. So the announcement is given both by way of mouth. The parents say, we recommend that the parent who is usually less assertive is the one that speaks it out. He can read from the page or he can say it, from memory. But in any case, they come with a written page and they deliver the announcement to the child. Or if the child doesn't take it, they leave it on his desk, bed, or table. And if the child tears it up, they say, you know of it, and there is a copy on the fridge. That is, he's not even expected to listen to it. It's even that is, for instance, many times parents ask, how can I guarantee that he will at least or she will at least listen? No, you don't guarantee. You deliver it. That's all. That's what you do. You deliver it in quite a solemn manner. So it is very important that this be a formal occasion. This is not a spontaneous occasion. Parents sometimes say, look, I don't like this formality. I want it to be, so they prefer to do an announcement like, say, by the way, but we don't want. Parents who want to do it by the way, don't create that caesura in time, that break in time. It's not a rite of passage. Rites of passage are always formal in all society, because they signify exactly that break in time. This is something different. The formality conveys the message. This is a special kind of event. So the parents come into the child's room, sit with him, and say, we have an announcement to make to you. And then one of them says the announcement, and the other one gives the announcement. Here it is also in writing. You may have a look at it. I don't agree, and so you were not expected. Not important. They get up and they leave. They don't stay in the room to discuss the announcement. Very important. The announcement is something they give the child. If the child wants to say something, they listen to it and say, but the announcement stays in place. So formality, one-sidedness, it is a unilateral message. As you know, dialogue is important, but parents must be able also to act in ways which do not depend exclusively on dialogue. Their limits are their limits. They are not subject to dialogue, their own limits. That's very important. Now, always, in the announcement, there is a clause that specifically lifts the veil of secrecy. Every time an announcement is delivered, it must be clear for the child, that the behaviors that are talked about in the announcement are no longer secret, but the parents will talk about them and get the help of anybody that can help. This is very important. Children protest. Hey, you cannot talk about my things with the strangers. This is a very common reaction. Then the parent says, these are our problems. And we are telling you, not only yours, they are also yours, but it is our problems and the whole family. And our problems, are things that we will talk with other people. They are our things. Violence is never a private matter. We'll have a special talk about violence, but violence is never a private matter. You don't keep the veil of secrecy. It's not an intimate matter. If you keep it intimate, you perpetuate it. If you keep it secret, you cooperate with it. So there's always a clause in the announcement Okay, we won't keep the secret anymore. Always, invariably, you discuss this with the parents, but the clause should be there. Many times when the parents formulate the announcement, they keep this clause out. Then you discuss it with them. And you say, look, this is central. Because when you do this, you are diminishing, reducing, okay, your legitimacy, your positive power enormously. Okay, so we talk about it. This is very important. Okay, if the parent persists, we don't stop the therapy. We only say, look, you will be less efficient, will be less effective. Okay, the fact that you don't say this is, in some sense, a certain lack of courage. We want to help you develop the courage to be able to. We want to help you develop the courage for your parenthood. And lifting the veil of secrecy is a key element in lifting, in getting that courage and developing, manifesting that courage. Then we're still in the preparation. The parents get a homework to formulate the announcement. We have explained to them, and they formulate the announcement. As I reminded you, there are those key elements, okay? We have decided that we won't accept this and this behavior. We will resist it by all means. We won't keep the secret anymore. We'll get help from anybody who can help us. And we do this because this is our utmost loving duty. This is our absolute duty as a parent. That's those that say those are the central elements. Parents say more. We'll see parents say more. Those are necessary. There's different style. So, okay, the parents get that homework, and before they deliver the announcement, okay, it's a very good idea for the therapist to discuss that formulation and possibly to make some corrections. I'll show you an example of a typical problematic announcement, quite typical. Okay, the most problematic things is that some parents tend to talk too much in the announcement. Okay, they explain too much, they justify themselves too much. Okay, and that reduces the positive power of the announcement. That they explain their love, their care, why this is good for everybody. Okay, that is another problem with the announcement is, as I said, that too many targets. Okay, that's problematic. Another problem, typical problem of the announcement is when it is formulated in the second person, you won't do this anymore. It is not that. The announcement is, from now on, we won't accept. It's always the first person plural. Always, that's very important. And those things should be corrected. And as I said, many parents omit, okay, the clause saying that they won't keep the secret anymore. Okay, so these are the main important things. Some therapists, okay, like to discuss it. Okay, the parents wrote an announcement and they do a whole discussion in the session. Other therapists, myself included, we get the parental formulation by mail, and then if there are not too many corrections, if it is not really very much out, then we can do some propose small corrections by mail. Okay, but that's a different question of style. An important element of the preparation is to prepare for the child's reactions. What do you do if the child does, and what they should do? Okay, it is important that the child does not have to accept the announcement. The parents finish it, the child protests, whatever they said, okay, you can protest. We didn't expect you to agree. This is our announcement. Here it is. They go out. They leave the room. No attempt to reach an agreement. This is very important. If you attempt to reach an agreement, actually you are saying that the announcement is debatable and you don't want. And a very important element is after the parents develop the announcement in the coming session, okay, the therapist will ask them, how did it go? And this how did it go question is very important also for the city and also for the telephone round. The goal of this post factum analysis, how did it go, is to make sure that at that point that you're changing your behavior. It is your message. You're controlling yourselves and not the child. Okay, this is what you changed. This is what you did. You were able to do this. Okay, those are the important things. But the child did this, the child did this, the child did this, the child did this. We call this negative hypnosis. What does it mean, negative hypnosis? The parents are completely hypnotized by the child's reaction. That's all they see. Okay, they don't see what they are doing differently. Okay, so that's how did it go? Aims really, we want to see how, this step actually made the parents behave different, feel differently, and ask, how did you feel? Did you feel different in any way? Did you feel that this was, artificial? Okay, very good, artificial. Was it only bad that is artificial? Okay, we ask why. Why artificial is artificial bad? Okay, when you have a broken leg, you set it up. Okay, you have to set it, you have to fix it, and it's artificial. Okay, you make a cast. A cast is artificial. Okay, but you need it. Okay, to put it back in place. Now, so here is an example of the first version of an announcement for an adoptive child. You see many of those typical mistakes. Dear Eddie, we're very glad that you live with us. We love you very much. An adopted child, they begin like this. We see you as an important part of our family. But this does not mean that you don't have to abide by rules such, why is this problematic? Okay, they're talking too much, justifying themselves too much. Okay, there is a famous quote in Hamlet when there is a play within the play. And his mother, Gertrude, in the play, she explains her action so much, and she's going to poison the king. She says how much she loves the king. And then Hamlet says to Ophelia, who's sitting by his side, the lady does protest too much, methinks. Why does she talk so much? Why is she so keen on declaring her love, for her husband? So she's going to kill him. So that, And then it goes on. We ask that you don't shut yourself in your room. We also don't shut ourselves in our room, as if it were the same things. It's not the same thing. We appreciate your help with the dog, but in the last few weeks, you have forgotten to take Joey out. It's a funny thing. It's not, they don't even dare to say, this is your dog and this is your responsibility. We expect you to do it. Usually this wouldn't also be a good stuff for an announcement, taking out the dog. These parents chose it, among others, because they were afraid to deal with more important issues. This was a violent child. We want to help you not to sit so much time with the computer during the vacation. We want to help you. We ask you to choose 3 other activities and stick by that. We want you to stop anything you're doing when we call you to it. It is important for us and also nicer. We want you to fulfill all these requests. This will greatly improve the atmosphere at home. These things are not difficult, and I believe you'll feel better if you do that. We love you more than anything in the world, Mom and Dad. So after such an announcement, definitely we need, to dedicate a session to discuss this. We are seeing that the parents are now not announcing, they're begging. And they're frittering their efforts. So those are things. And there's a very big problem with the priorities. So, this would be a good announcement to work upon. Now, see, this is a good announcement for a child, to a dear child with OCD. Dear Max, we understand that your difficult behavior stems from anxiety from your OCD. The parents are showing that they understand, the child's difficulty is a very good beginning. We know that you suffer and we want to help you. So that's all. Positive opening, but that's all. but we'll no longer accept that you attack your brother and make him do things he doesn't want to do. Many children with OCD, okay, force their siblings to do things they don't want. We'll protect babe against your expressions from disgust. This was a child who every time that the baby, okay, started to eat and, okay, blabbering and, okay, he would say, oh, disgusting. Okay. He'll be allowed to sit wherever he wants during meals or when you're watching TV. Kids was already a toddler. We will protect our bodies, our sleep in our room. We will not stay alone, but we will get help from any person that can help us. You see, that clause is there. We cannot and do not wish to control, but we've decided we'll no longer be passive and anonymous victims of compulsions and attacks. Your loving parents, very, very clear. So this is typical length of an announcement. Don't need, okay, much more. This is the announcement to a teen at high risk. Dear Helen, we understand that you have a strong need for freedom and you're deeply loyal to your friends. Okay, this is an empathic beginning. We understand these important feelings and motivations. However, we've decided we'll no longer put up with lies and disappearance. We'll resist these behaviors with all means at our disposal. When you go out without our permission, we'll look for you. When we feel that you're lying to us, we'll supervise you closely. We'll no longer be alone in this, but we'll get the help from relatives and friends. We're doing this because we simply cannot or will not give you up. Your mom and dad. These are typical. But you know, there are differences in style. Some parents will want to speak a little bit more. We ask why this is important, but then it's justified. Okay. Sometimes it is even shorter. The shortest announcement that we had in all of our experiences was that made by a father, a widower, okay, whose adolescent son was gambling and stealing money to gamble. And he knew already what the father's position was, and the father wanted, okay, the announcement to express something that really was manifesting his change in attitude. So he gave an announcement of one word, big, enough, and that was it. Okay, enough. And then he felt that behind that enough, he would already, really, that was very, and in the end, we agreed with him that that was a good thing. After the announcement, of course, okay, it's very important, how did it go? And then we focus on what happened with the parents, on the changes with the parents. That's the second tool that we're going to discuss now, to describe now, is the sit-in. In many articles, especially in newspapers, the sit-in has become like emblematic of NVR. Okay, it's like a symbol. Yeah, it is one tool among others. It is an important tool. But there are in some countries, they don't use the sit-in so much. In others, they use a lot, okay, the sit-in. But what is important is to understand what are the goals, why we use it, why some parents prefer not to do it, and why we should discuss it with those parents or some therapists. Anyhow, sit-in is very important for therapists. Okay, you see, in the goals of the sit-in, we have to think and discuss for the parents what are the goals of the sit-in, the goals for the parents, the goals regarding the child, and the goals regarding the therapist. What is the main goals for the parent? Is to develop their capacity to manifest the decided presence, okay, that a sit-in required, and to control themselves. The sit-in is a fantastic exercise in self-control. It's a very intense manifestation of presence. It is also a manifestation of courage. Parents who are afraid of the sit-in then can be convinced to do the sit-in, and they do the sit-in. It changes something in them, so that one of the goals of the parents is to help them cross, okay, this bridge, that they are able to do this. Get into the child's room is like, okay, getting into the lion's den. Okay, get in sometimes, okay, get and sit there. It takes courage. They don't start talking before they sit, because if they get into the room and already starting, then it's very invasive, very provocative. Let's just collect. They sit first. Where do they sit? Okay, originally we thought that they should sit blocking the door. Well, that's not such a good idea. We have changed that. They sit where they feel comfortable. And if the child leaves the room, it's not the end of the world. Okay? So they sit where they choose to sit. They sit, okay, one to the side of the other, facing the child. Okay, so they're not really showing we are going to impose this on you, but they're showing we are going to be here with you. This is an important. So it's an important goal of the sit-in to be there, to stay there. Time is an important goal of the sit-in. A good sit-in takes time. How much time? Up to 1 hour. What do you do in the sit-in? He says, we are here because we're not willing to accept this kind of behavior, something that happened at the sit-in. The goal of the sit-in is only one. Announcement may have two. This happened, and we are not going to accept it. And we'll sit here with you, and we will wait until a solution comes up, how this may not happen again. Everything that you say to us is of importance. And then they stay quiet. It's very important, but it is a very important kind of quiet. It's an attentive quiet. It's the quiet of contact and not of detachment. So they say everything that you say. There's already a change in that we made in instructions. Everything that you may say to us is important. We'll pay attention. And this, they're quiet but attentive. Okay, in the sit-in, the parents are together if there are two. If there is only one parent, a single parent family, divorced parents, and the other parent is not present, okay, there are various possibilities. If the other parent is willing to give telephone support, many times with divorced parents we get, that's very important. So the mother can say to the child, your father is also in and this is now on the telephone. This is a very good idea. Sometimes with a violent child, it's a good idea to have a supporter in the house or on the cell phone. Okay, and the parent may say, okay, Uncle John, Grandpa is here, okay, he's sitting in the dining room, okay. If you start screaming, then he'll be a witness and, okay, he'll help me simply, okay, bear the situation and stay this with you. It is not you who come and discipline you. That's not it. Okay. But the fact is that when there is another person in the house, sometimes in the room or in the telephone, the level of violence in the sit-in is much, much lower. Usually there's no physical violence. Rarely, very rarely. Okay. So these are the goals. What is the goal for the child? Okay. Are there, yes, okay, what is important for us, okay, is our goal for the child, is that the child should simply see that the parents are doing something very different. Okay, our goal for the child is for the child to open his eyes, to be surprised. The child may protest. That doesn't mean that this goal wasn't achieved. Okay, to see that the parents there, simply to say, hey, what happened here? Something happened here. What, did you fall on your head? Okay, that's our goal for the child. There's an important goal for the therapist too. It takes courage. A therapist needs courage to do sit-ins. That's one of the reasons that we say that in the formation of an NVR therapist, okay, we think that every NVR therapist or counselor should do 3 sit-ins with 3 different families, 3 telephone rounds, and 3 supporters meetings. When you do all of these things, okay, then you have, okay, gained your, okay, you are now an NVR therapist, so you can do that. Why? Because it takes courage to do that. We have found, and we think that in places where therapists prefer not to do sit-in, it's because therapists work alone. And for the sit-in, it is good to have at least a team to discuss, to learn together with. Okay, when therapists works in teams together or learn NVR, then they do sit-ins. Therapists who are completely isolated and learn NVR from a book. Then why? Because the isolated therapist has less courage, is more afraid. So if he has less courage, he's more afraid, he won't be able to inspire courage in the parents. Okay, so the sit-in is a very important exercise for therapists to develop their courage by which they will inspire courage. They prepare the parents also for problematic possibilities. Let's say the child becomes aggressive, violent. It's important to stop the sit-in. To stop the sit-in. Okay, it's not a terrible outcome. You stop the sit-in. You said what you wanted to say, child becomes violent, you stop the sit-in, and then you do other things, other manifestations. Okay, if there is, as I said, a supporter in the house or in the cell phone, chances of violence during the sit-in are reduced drastically. You should do this. Maybe child was violent, maybe you dare to do another sit-in with support later on. Okay, but the bad thing is that you think that the child is going to behave violently, you prepare to that, okay, eventuality beforehand, you bring somebody or you have somebody on your cell phone. Okay, that's important. So you prepare for the sit-in, just like the announcement. It's very important. Again, role plays are very helpful. If you, as a therapist, feel comfortable with role playing. So this is the next. If not, you build a detailed scenario. And you ask the parents, how do you think your child will react? What is the worst scenario? Okay, what is the expected scenario? And then you think differently, mother. Okay, they're preparing for the scenario. And then the parents learn how to face each of these options. How do you react when the child ignores you? How do you react when the child goes to the computer and sits ostentatively in front of the screen? What do? One good idea is to take your chairs closer to the child and to sit behind his back looking also at the screen. This is a very good response. Okay, you can sit at arm's distance so that the child, you never, okay, turn the off button of the computer when the child is sitting before it. This creates awful escalation, terrible. Never do it. Okay, later, okay, you can take out the component, neutralize the computer, and perhaps do another sit-in and say, okay, now, okay, we're going to sit here. We want to tell you, and we have to look for a honorable solution. You can use that word. We want a honorable solution, honorable also for you. A solution with dignity for you. Okay, this is important to say because it helps very much. The setting of the sit-in, parents must prepare for the sit-in. For instance, the other kid, somebody must take care of the other kid. Both parents should be at the sit-in if there are two parents. So it is never done, a sit-in or an announcement, it's never done immediately in the wake of the problematic behavior. Always some hours or even a day afterwards. Okay, you should hit the iron when it is cold, always. Otherwise, okay, then you consider the whole process and you say your goal is to stay there, to control yourselves, to remain attentive, to stay silent for good stretches of time. And if there is no solution, how long you should stay there? Up to 1 hour. With a 4-year-old child, don't do 1 hour, do 20 minutes. But with a 7-year-old child, you can already do up to 1 hour. The child can shorten the sit-in if he proposes a solution that is even just begins to be acceptable. Something like, no, I'll try my best not to do it. Wonderful, we'll give that a chance. They get up and leave the room. What happens if there is no offer of a solution? About 50% of the sit-ins, there's no offer of solution. Okay, this means that the sit-in was a failure? No, it doesn't mean that sit-in was a failure. If the parents sat there, controlled themselves, gave their message, and were silent for a reasonable amount of time, okay, it's a very good sit-in. So afterwards, okay, when we analyze the sit-in, we go over the parents' reactions. It's very how they feel, their attitude. And very often they come and say it didn't work. Why? The child behaved obstreperously, or afterwards it changed his behavior. Doesn't mean a thing. Okay? I think that we have quite a few dramatic examples. We had a father, again, a widower, who did a sit-in with a 12-year-old boy. And immediately when the father sat there, the boy climbed out of the window and into the street. Okay, they were on the floor level. And so the father said, what am I going to do now? You can't do a sit-in without the candidate. Okay, the candidates run away. So what did he do? And this became clear in the analysis that we did. When we asked him about the sit-in, he said, the father said, no, it didn't work. I couldn't do the sit-in at all. Why? Because he ran away. But what happened? And then the father said, what happened? And the father remembered that, okay, child ran away. He could leave signs of his presence, order things up, write a message, put it on the child's desk. And then the father had a kind of a inspiration. He laid in the child's bed, resting, waiting for the child, and he fell asleep. At the end of our discussion about, this sleep-in, it was a sleep-in, a lie-in, not a sit-in in the end. The father said that he slept for the best 15 minutes ever since he had become a widow. Okay, that was incredible. Okay, so after he was already deep asleep, the child comes in and says, hey, what are you doing in my bed? And the father said, I was just waiting for you so that we can continue looking for a solution. So that's what happened. There's the story of the three bears, okay, where there's this girl, Goldilocks, okay, she comes and she tries to sit in the father's bear and the mother's bear and then in the baby bear's bed. And whenever who slept in my bed? And the baby bear, who is sleeping in my bed? This was a baby bear reaction. Who is sleeping in my bed? It was, okay, the father was sleeping in his bed. Okay, fantastic lie in or sleep in. You see the variance, and it's interesting, okay? There are variants to the sit-in. We have a very, well-defined procedure. There were criticisms, okay? Some people said it's a terrible intervention based on disconnection. You stay silent. Okay, so one of the important modifications, we meant it, always so, but we hadn't specified it. Yeah, it should be the silence of attention, of connectedness. We're close to you. Then the whole expression, everything that you say will be important to us. Okay, so the silence is not one of disconnection. Then there was this, okay, you can't get the parent to block the door. This is violent. Okay, so we accepted this criticism. Yeah, you're right. Parents don't have to block the door. Okay, we accepted this. Okay, so then we modify. And then there are variants like this sleep-in or lie-in that the father developed. A very interesting variant of the sit-in was invented also by a father, and then we started using it also. What is the sit-in on wheels? It was a father whose son had ADHD, and he also had ADHD. And he told us after, okay, when we got the instructions to the sit-in, it seemed that he agreed to everything. Then he came to us in the next meeting and said, look, I know that I couldn't stand there silent for a whole hour. I would get crazy. I cannot. Okay? He was very restless himself. But he enjoyed driving very much. So the child had stolen money, apparently to buy things for a friend or so on. So the father says, come, we are going together on a ride. He takes the boy by the hand, they get to the car, and he starts driving. Where are we going, Dad? Okay, I'm not sure yet, but important is that we go together. And we'll do something together. And he drives. Now, in Israel, if you're in the center of Israel, you can drive at most 2 hours to the north and 3 hours to the south. So he drove to the north, 2 hours. And he drove and drove and drove and drove. And when he got to the north, okay, They got down at a cafe. They went down to the cafe. Father asked what he wants. He went and he ordered. He sat with the boy. And then he said, tell me, are you lacking anything? Is there anything that you lack, that you absolutely need, that you don't have, that we are not giving you? And the child said, no, I don't lack anything. And he said, but no, you stole money. And this is not, it's so uncharacteristic of you. And I understand, tell me if I'm wrong. I understand that you stole money because you wanted to do something nice to your friend. I know that you're very loyal to your friends. Was it that? And the child was very embarrassed and he nodded like this. He says, look, if you had a need like that, even if it is a special need, you come and talk to me. You come and talk to me. Okay, but I don't accept that you steal money from us. We have to think how you give us back the money. You can give it on services. And afterwards, the boy agreed to wash the car. And so he went back to the car, hugging his boy. So this is a very close and warm sit-in, extremely. In fact, we have done this, okay? We have asked parents, how would they prefer? And some of them did sit-ins on wheels. In one case, 3 days like this. They went somewhere, the parents, and afterward the grandparents came and took their place and stayed for 3 days. It was an extremely violent child. Okay, and this was a 3-day long sit-in. Okay, also in a special place. They didn't go to the sea. They didn't go fishing. They were there. Okay, and a normal routine. Okay, and they waited for 3 days. Okay, but this is extremely rare. Sit-in. Okay, circumscribed, and we say, okay, a counselor or therapist that the 3 sit-ins, okay, is already, okay, on its way to becoming a good NVR therapist. Okay, this we're going to talk about in our next session. Okay, as you see, these are major interventions. Okay, you should learn, but especially you should learn why we do it. What are our goals? How you prepare for it? How you create those scenarios? How do you analyze it with the parents? Because you want to get the parents to be able to perceive the changes that they made in themselves. Okay, that's a very important thing in the analysis of a sit-in. Thank you very much.